name is Theo Thompson, and this is David Robinson. And welcome to The Biz.
Today, we are here with a few researchers to talk about their information about polio. Let's jump right in.
The first researcher we're going to talk to today is Meera. Hello there, Meera.
Hello, Theo.
So why did you choose to research the interaction between poliomyelitis and humans?
Polio is a very dangerous and contagious disease that has affected millions of people around the world. We first heard about polio when a woman from the Rick Housen Foundation came to talk to us about accessibility for disabled people. Being a person who uses a wheelchair, she was able to thoroughly explain the many challenges that disabled individuals face because of the very few accessible and inclusive places that are provided to them by the public. She also told us the story of why she had to use a wheelchair. When she was just a toddler, she got infected by the poliomyelitis disease after swimming in a contaminated lake. Soon she lost the ability to walk without any assistance and had to get around with either her wheelchair, the one she uses the most often, or her crutches. We got interested in her disease, and when our science teacher, Ms. Siva, gave us this assignment, it seemed to be just the right timing. So we chose polio as our research topic. We also thought that the interaction between polio and humans would be very complex and interesting to research. We thought that polio was a disease that not many people knew about compared to Ebola, measles, and other diseases that have had recent outbreaks. We really wanted to educate our peers and teach them about the different methods used to prevent polio, and as anyone who's not protected is very vulnerable to be infected by this disease.
Thank you, Meera.
Thank you, Theo.
We have Thushanth. Let's give him a warm round of applause. Hello.
Hello, Theo.
So would you like to tell us what is the history of polio?
Gladly, polio was a disease which started in the late 1700s. Poliomyelitis is a word made up of two Greek words meaning gray matter. This is because polios means gray, while myelos means matter. Joining together, it is gray matter. One of the first recorded cases of polio is in 1771. The patient was a Scottish author whose name was Sir Walter Scott. He had a fever for 3 days, and after, he found that he couldn't use his right leg, which had become paralyzed from polio. In the early 1900s, many research scientists made crazy theories, like polio is caused by foreigners, it is caused by poor sanitation, and that it is carried by animals. Many humans and animals suffered from New York research scientists' crazy hypothesis. In America, polio was one of the worst outbreaks in the early 1900s, and it infected millions and millions of people, while it paralyzed and sometimes killed thousands. The first vaccine, which was an injected vaccine for polio, was created by Jonas Salk in 1952. An oral vaccine was created by Albert Sabin about 5 years later. Polio has drastically decreased from 350,000 cases in 1988 to 223 cases in 2012. The last outbreak of polio in Canada was in 1958 to 1959.
Quite fascinating. Thank you. We will show you a few pictures while we get set up for our next interview.
Welcome back to The Biz. Now we are going to talk to Harigaran Ballinja, or Harry as he is more commonly known as. Here's another researcher of polio. Hello, Harry.
Hello, David.
Could you please tell us what is poliomyelitis?
Sure. Poliomyelitis, also known as polio, is a contagious disease that is caused by a virus that attacks the nervous system. It enters through the mouth and works its way through the body. Most of the time, it will not give the victim a fatal disease or illness, but it can paralyze them, so they will not be able to move their limbs, such as their arms or their legs. Just because no fatal diseases can be caused by polio does not mean that it doesn't have the ability to kill you. It can kill the victim by freezing up the muscles that help the human breathe, thus killing the person. The age group that is most vulnerable to polio is children under the age of 5.
Very interesting. Could you also tell us what are the traits of poliomyelitis?
Absolutely. Two important traits of poliomyelitis are locomotion and cloning. These two traits play a large role in the spreading of polio disease in humans. The reason why polio gets around the human body so quickly is because it can move on by itself on the help of the systems in the human body, such as the digestive or the circulatory system, as well as the nervous system. Cloning is also a very important trait because without it, the polio disease will not be able to take over cells in the human body. In order for the disease to be in effect, multiple cells need to be affected.
Thank you. Theo Thompson will be back and he will cover the next interview.
Next, we have with us Meera again. Hello, Meera. Hi, Theo. Could you tell us what causes poliomyelitis? Sure. The polio virus is the culprit of infecting the victims of polio. The polio virus can be spread to other people easily. Typically, the virus would enter the environment via a polio victim's waste product. In places that aren't very clean, the polio virus can spread from person to person through the fecal-oral way, contaminating water or food. You can also contract polio by having direct contact with the victim of polio.
Oh really? Well, I'll try to avoid that. Could you also tell us what are the different types of poliomyelitis?
Absolutely. There are 3 different types of poliomyelitis. There are subclinical, non-paralytic, and paralytic. The subclinical form of polio does not affect the central nervous system at all. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. There are no symptoms from this form of polio infection. The non-paralytic form of polio does affect the central nervous system, and it also produces mild symptoms. However, it does not result in paralysis. The paralytic form of polio is the rarest and most severe form of polio. This can produce full or partial paralysis in the patient. There are 3 types of paralytic polio: spinal polio, which affects the spine; bulbar polio, which affects the brainstem; and bulbospinal polio, which affects the spine and brainstem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Biz. Following Meera, we have TeeJay Holder, another researcher of polio. Hi TeeJay.
Hi, David.
Could you tell us what are the effects of polio on humans?
With pleasure. External. When you have non-paralytic polio type, your external appearance will not change that much. You, however, look very, very sick, and it'll due to all the signs of non-paralytic polio you're showing. If you have paralytic polio, then your muscle mass in your arms and legs will decrease a lot over time until it looks bony. It becomes floppy and loose and not really set the way normal limbs are. For example, there's a young boy who is mainly a toddler with a polio-like disease, and his legs are not normal. Instead, they are spread out like a frog, practically constantly doing the splits instead of straight down like legs normally do. We will not be able to control your arms and leg muscles as soon as you become paralyzed, hence the name paralytic and paralytic polio. Internal. When someone has some clinic polio, they may have headaches, sore throat or red throat, slight fever, and vomiting.
Those are very scary effects. Could you also inform us about the symptoms of polio?
Gladly, David. Polio, when it is at its most peak forms, simply shows signs of paralysis and death. Despite this, you won't really be able to identify any signs of polio on a person with polio. You might not even notice that they have polio. If you do happen to spot symptoms of polio, however, you may be able to identify which type of polio this person has. Non-paralytic polio makes the person seem to have the flu for a few days or weeks. Examples are fevers, sore throats, headaches, vomiting, fatigue, neck and back pains, neck and back aches, stiffness in arms and legs, muscle spasms, and meningitis. Paralytic polio normally starts out looking like non-paralytic polio, but as time goes on, more alarming signs of this type of polio will appear. Some examples are lack of muscle reflexes, extreme muscle spasms and aches, much too flexible arms and legs, floppy and loose. Most of the time, one side of the body is worse than the other.
Thank you. Now, Theo Thompson will be covering the next interview.
Bye.
So now we're with Julia and Meera. Hello, Julia. Hello. Hi, Meera. Hi. So now we're going to talk to them. So, could you explain the interaction of polio in each of the systems in humans?
The first system that the polio virus enters through is the digestive system.
Okay.
The purpose of the digestive system is to digest food consumed by the human and to get rid of any excess water. No, not water, matter, sorry.
Okay.
The digestive system mainly consists of a long tube called the alimentary canal and the gastrointestinal tract, or the GI tract.
Okay.
The alimentary canal is made of the oral cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestines, and large intestines. The digestion process in a human usually takes around 6 to 8 hours, although for some people it can take up to a day or two. The polio virus, as mentioned earlier, enters through from the mouth and into the digestive system. When it reaches the intestine, it finds an intestinal cell that has the correct receptors and attacks the cell. The poliovirus genome, or RNA, gets into the cell and begins to multiply. After the poliovirus enters the bloodstream.
The next system is the circulatory system. The bloodstream is vital in transporting nutrients and matter around the human body. It also plays a key role in the circulatory and cardiovascular system. The human bloodstream is made up of red and white blood cells and platelets. The bloodstream engages in a process called systemic circulation. This process is the circulation of blood to all parts of the body except the lungs. Once the poliovirus enters the bloodstream, it is transported throughout the body, infecting the human. It can also affect the brain by entering the anterior and posterior arteries connected to it. This can lead to paralysis.
The final one is the nervous system. The polio attacks the CNS, also known as the central nervous system. It damages some nerves once attacked. Once these nerves are damaged, the infected person can't use the body parts which are connected to the damaged nerves. This causes paralysis and is usually the main problem for infected people who survive. The nervous system may have temporary or permanent damage from polio.
If the infected person is lucky, they'll have temporary damage, but an infected person is most likely to get permanently damaged nerves than temporarily damaged nerves. While the infected person has a fever during the day, the paralysis sets in overnight when the person is not using that body part. Therefore, the nervous system is affected because the nerves are temporarily or permanently damaged. This only sets in overnight when the person isn't using that or those body parts. The damage, whatever type it is, leads to paralysis.
Thank you, both of you.
Hello, Harry.
Hello, David.
Thanks for coming back. So I was wondering if you could explain to us some of the important traits of humans.
Of course. Important traits of humans that are vital in the interaction between polio and humans are their vulnerability for infection and the locomotion occurring in the interior systems. The fact that humans are easily affected by the surrounding environment makes it easier for them to contract polio. Polio can also enter through the mouth of humans and begin infecting the internal organs. Also, the locomotion that occurs during the process of digestion, circulation, and during the processes that occur in the nervous system aid the locomotion and spreading of the polio disease.
Well, thank you for saying that, Harry. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Hi, Julia. Could you explain to us the interaction between poliomyelitis and humans, please? Well, actually, I have a storyboard, so... First of all, the poliovirus usually enters the human body through the mouth. It can do so through infected food or water. Once the virus enters the human body, it goes through the digestive system, meaning the esophagus, stomach, and the intestines. While the virus is in the intestine, it searches for an intestinal cell with the correct receptors. Once it finds that cell, it begins infecting it. The poliovirus genome, or RNA, enters the cell and takes over it. The new RNA, combined with the new capsids, or shells, created through the process of cloning and infection, creates a new capsid forming. The thousands of capsids, or polioviruses now, that are created into this process burst out of the intestinal cell and into the bloodstream. The bloodstream carries this virus to all parts of the body through the respiratory system. The poliovirus begins infecting the human. Some of these cells reach the central nervous system. Once this process is completed, a human is now completely affected by the poliovirus.
Here is the final section with TeeJay Holder. Hi, TeeJay.
Hi, David.
Could you explain why this interaction is important and why we should care as humans?
Alright. We think that people should care about the interaction between poliomyelitis and humans because the polio virus created through the interaction has cost many lives and left many disabled. A lot of humans affected were children. In fact, there are many cases of poliomyelitis being reported daily. We believe that it's important that society is educated on this matter because contracting polio is very easy. We humans are always being affected by the environment that surrounds us. We are not being careful while jumping in a river, drinking water, or eating food. You will never know whether these substances contain the polio virus. We think that it's important that humans learn to live cleaner lifestyles. In Canada, this may not be a big problem, but in developing countries, it is. Many innocent people, more specifically in Asia and Africa, are dying due to the polio virus. And many of these deaths are preventable. As a developed nation, we must educate others on ways we can prevent polio. Some examples of ways you can prevent polio is by using cleaner water. Although clean water may not be available in developing countries, we as a developed nation have the ability to change that. When we become more educated on the subject of polio, we will be able to better understand the disease and come up with cures. There is no actual cure to polio. You can only reduce the effects of the symptoms. Heat and physical therapy is used to stimulate the muscles, and anti-spasmodic drugs are given to relax the muscles. While this can improve mobility, it cannot reverse permanent polio paralysis. Maybe a few years from now, the polio virus will be eliminated. We can do it with the right knowledge, perseverance, and determination. Soon everybody will be living a polio-free lifestyle.
Thank you so much for sharing your information and being here today, TeeJay.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, that was a whole lot of information.
You said it. We thank all the researchers again for taking time out of their busy schedules to share their information with us.
Well, until next time, from my co-host David and I, we would like to say goodbye and see you in a bizzle.